Welcome back to another episode of Capes and Tights, a comic book and pop culture podcast. I'm Justin. That's Adam. We're here to talk Spider-Man. I'm excited. I already watched them recently. Homecoming and No Way Home. I still don't know what the whole home thing is. I don't know if they ever really touch on that. I know originally when the Spider-Man, this is obviously the only MCU movie that's not fully owned by Marvel, like in Disney, because the rights are like kind of like 50% or whatever. We don't know the exact details of their contract. But it's a Sony Pictures that's in this MCU in a sense. Like I think last time I checked, I think Disney gets like 5% of sales or something weird.
Big, yeah. I think the important part, I don't know if people listening, I didn't really realize, but like I saw some people talking about how this is with the multiverse and everything. This is the end of Spider-Man in the MCU. And it absolutely is not how that contract is set up. Like he can come back later, but anybody that doesn't follow the IP stuff, I just learned that today where they're like, no, not even remotely.
But I know when they started the Sony thing, and it's like, oh, Spider-Man is coming. That Marvel and Sony have worked out a deal to make this. And when he became first appeared in Captain America, Civil War, it was like almost a big thing, and they did this whole thing. Spider-Man's coming home, right? It's like he's coming home to Marvel again, like this whole thing. So the home thing was always involved in it. But then Spider-Man Homecoming again, it makes sense because it was Homecoming when he had to Yep. And then the second one, No Way Home, which he was on, Far From Home, he was on in what's it called?
Venice.
Yeah, Venice. So he was like away from home, right? Far from home. And then this one, No Way Home, does tell me though, that is he gonna be not in New York anymore? Like, is he not gonna be in his universe anymore by the end of the movie? But we'll get to that when we talk about No Way Home.
Exactly.
What I will say overall, I want a couple overall arching things before we get into some of the specifics about the movies. Is one, very refreshing, and this kind of has something to do with Homecoming, that there wasn't an actual origin story.
Yes.
Like there was just a touch on it. Like when him and Ned are walking and they're talking, and he's like, and Ned keeps on asking him, "Where's the Spider? The Spider-Man's not alive anymore. The Spider-Man's dead. Move on." Or the Spider-Man's dead. And all that stuff. The other thing was that it was refreshing that it was not all based in New York City. That they had this beginning of Homecoming where it was like, okay, we're in New York City because that's where Spider-Man is. He's a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But Homecoming really had to do a lot with DC. You know what I mean? When they went to DC. Right. And then Far From Home, he was in Venice and other places in Europe. And then, now we're going to have the multiverse part. It's probably going to have something to do with New York City still. But like the idea that it wasn't fully based around like the sole purpose of the movie is that he's a spider crawling, web slinging thing in New York City, which I like. Maybe was different.
I agree. Maybe that's just to, approach a broader market because it's hard. I mean, because you're right. Spider-Man is New York. Yes. So maybe that other people can connect easier if he's more international.
But I also feel like the people, when they said, okay, when they announced back in the day, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, oh my gosh, Spider-Man's coming to the big screen. It was awesome. Sam Raimi did a great job with them for what they were. Obviously, I think they were the best thing you possibly could get for Spider-Man until these movies, because these movies, I think it might be a hot take, but these are the best Spider-Man movies there are out there. Other people will like talk about Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire and all that stuff, but I still think these are the best Spider-Man movies that are out there, Homecoming and Far From Home. But when they announced the Spider-Man Andrew Garfield movies, they're like, okay, they're rebooting it, cool. And then when they announced these movies, some of those fringe Marvel people, fringe superhero people, or people who are not in the superhero worlds, were like, what the hell, again? And so I feel like they had to have some service to those people by being like, yes, it is again, but it's not an origin story, and it's not fully based in New York City, and it's not this. It's a younger character and all that stuff. So I think there was a little bit of we can't just do this over again, because if we do it over again, it's not going to make the money that we want it to.
Exactly. Well, and they knew that there was, the big, like now we know, surprise coming, that those other Spider-Man movies, if you grew up with those, they're a part of this whole thing. So that's super cool. Like that's what that's a way to just make everybody happy.
And so Spider-Man Homecoming came out in July 7th, 2017. It was made for $175 million and brought in $880.2 million, which I think, I didn't look it up, but was roughly what Spider-Man 1 made, like the original Spider-Man Tobey Maguire
Right.
made, right around there was a high money making film. 7.4 on IMDb, 92% critics and 87% audience on Rotten Tomatoes. Um, Again, I think they did a great job with Tom Holland, because Tom Holland. So
Yep.
if anybody doesn't follow Spider-Man in general, but just watch these movies and seen these movies, Spider-Man was created in Amazing Fantasy 15 as a high school student who dealt with high school problems, dating, acne, homework, jobs, stress, bullying, all that stuff was part of it. And that's why Stan Lee and the team at Marvel created Spider-Man, was to make it so that he was a superhero, but had to deal with regular life. And that was the whole thing. And that's one of the reasons why, we've had this discussion, DC versus Marvel, why I like Spider-Man or Marvel so much is because it's based in real life. Like I could be bitten by a radioactive spider and become Spider-Man as a teenager. So they did a great job. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, at the time too, I mean, talk about hitting your age demographic. Like, I mean, now we know that much older age demographic with comic books now, but at the time, like, nobody was writing a teenager superhero for teenagers. I mean,
and when they made this Tobey Maguire movies, he was like a 30-year-old man dressed as an 18-year-old college or high school student. It was
totally
so stupid. And he was not dealing with actual problems in high school. It was this weird thing. It was like almost like they wanted to make a Spider-Man movie, but they were afraid to make it with a kid. And nowadays we've learned that young people can become stars. I mean, look at the gauntlet of Marvel and DC stuff. I mean, look at the Arrowverse in the DC universe of how many high school styles age, young adult TV shows there are. They know now we can make shows with young people, and Tom Holland's not 17 years old,
right?
He's 20s, but like it's good.
I think a lot of movie writers and producers learned from Harry Potter too, that if you get the right age and you just work with it, they also will age with the MCU. So I mean, you've got Tom Holland wherever he goes and does. I mean, he can go into the later college years and then the married years, and
I think young adults will watch a young adult star, and adults will watch a young adult star, whereas it may not have connected to young adults with an older generational person. Like, if it was as a Tobey Maguire style person to recast for this role, I don't know if the young adult population would be as connected as it is this. I think there are some of these characters that people connect with, like this Kate Bishop on Hawkeye is going to be for someone that a lot of young adults are going to connect with. Your younger people on these shows are going to be connecting with these younger adult audience, which again, to me has always been a factor in this, is that $880 million in this movie, that's parents and a kid going to the movie. Right. It's not just two parents going to the movie. It's not just kids. It's kids, teenagers maybe going out on a Friday night going to see the movie. But then again, the parents go with the kid later on, or you're going to make way more money off of making a younger series thing, but with some adult themes to it. There's still some stuff in there that he deals with that's, it's not just kid humor. There's some humor in there that's pretty funny. That's like adult humor as well. So, but the movie starts out. First of all, Michael Keaton was amazing in this movie as well.
He really was.
It was fascinating to see him. Also fascinating to see someone who has been a superhero in another series become a villain in this. And
Michael even played a movie that's like kind of meta about, what was that movie, Birdman or something, I forget what it's called with him, but like, what a great role. Like, he's such a, you just know what he is when he's in a superhero role.
And he's a classic actor. I feel like he's looked the same way forever. I feel like he's looked like this age for like 30 years now. But younger Michael Keaton obviously played Batman as well, and is going to be, I believe he's going to be in the new Batman movie, right? I'm not 100% sure on. I haven't looked up.
I heard something about that.
But they're taking away the alien tech. So this is one of the things I talked to Taylor about when we were watching this movie. First of all, Taylor's one of her favorite movies is Far From Home. She really loves Mysterio and Jake Gyllenhaal's character, but we'll get to that when we talked about that movie in a second. But we watching these movies, and they're so weirdly, it's the only movies that are not fully owned by Marvel. Incredible Hulk is, the distribution rights are owned by Universal, but that's different. They can still create whatever they want. They just can't distribute it without the permission from Universal. But Spider-Man with the Sony connection and all that stuff has so much Marvel Cinematic Universe attachments to it that it's just fascinating to see the intertwinedness of all of what's going on in the world, that they are talking at the beginning of Homecoming about the Battle of New York. You know what I mean? Like this is like a very, 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 very big thing that happened in the MCU. And now the Sony-owned property, technically partially owned by Marvel, is now talking about the Battle of New York in a way that you never thought would ever happen. And he's picking up all the alien tech, and he's showing you have to use alien tech to get alien tech off and all that stuff. But my whole point about this whole discussion here is damage control shows up, which to me is a classic Marvel comic book thing that a lot of people don't really know about, but it's the idea that there's a group of people there to help clean up the messes that the superheroes make when they're fighting these extra world characters. I just wish there was more to it. Like they talked about damage control and they showed it on the screen, and it was kind of like, oh, look at this Easter egg. I believe a number of years ago, they were going to make a TV show. There was going to be a sitcom, like a half an hour comedy, which is still possible. They still do it for Disney Plus at some point. But it's the idea that these people have this, like, it was like this office type humor. Where they're like living the life of like, oh my God, Iron Man did this again. And it's them cleaning up the messes of the superheroes' problems.
That would be great. I was going to say, or like a micro Dirty Jobs where like there's somebody that's like narrating what's going on, like over the show would actually be hilarious. Like
a mockumentary, like the idea that it's
exactly.
Like, it's based, it's supposed to look real, but it's
great.
Fake. It would be awesome.
Yeah, we need that.
But yeah, so it's definitely the beginning of that with that, showing the Vulture and all that stuff. And then the video that actually opens up really with the video of that Tom Holland or Peter Parker made when he was doing Civil War, which is awesome. Also connection to bringing those movies together. It's a home video that he was creating. And he's like, Happy's like, you can't show anybody this, right? Like you can't, this is obviously staying internally, but he's doing all this stuff and he's, it's great. It's a great way to connect it, great way to bring it into the fact that like he was introduced to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Civil War, but now he's in, Homecoming for this. And then at the end where he goes to get out the door, or Tony Stark opens the door and he's like hugging him. And he's like, I'm not hugging you, I'm grabbing the door for you. That's the kind of humor that I love about Marvel movies. That's like a serious moment.
The Spider-Man movies, humor is done so well. I think it's like up there with Ragnarok and some of the funnier ways. I mean, they blend the humor in so well. In fact, when I was writing like little notes for this, half of them are just like that line. That was a good one-liner.
Yes.
That was a good one-liner.
There's just, because when the comic books, it's like the same thing. Like we saw in Civil War, when he's fighting, he's making jokes, like he's cracking jokes. He has this humor that like Spider-Man is doing a serious thing, but he's a teenager and he's like, doesn't know when sarcasm and jokes are appropriate or not.
Right.
And that's the huge Spider-Man thing that they were able to bring into this, which they haven't been able to really do in previous Spider-Man movies. It's like, when he's fighting crime, he has to fight crime. He can't make jokes. It's like, no, he's doing that. He makes jokes when he's fighting in Germany on Civil War. And he's doing it the same thing in this movie.
When he's a teenager, like it's probably just a defense mechanism because he's probably scared.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's a thing in this one too. That's why, like you said, even back to the earlier comic book, like that's why Spider-Man's great, because he is scared and he doesn't quite know what he's doing. And
he's us. Like he would be what we would be if you and I got powers tomorrow. I feel like we'd be just like Tom Holland. It's Peter Parker.
What do we do? Yeah.
I and the same thing is if you had powers and you got called upon to be a superhero and help fight a battle of Civil War, like it was on the movie Civil War, and then you just go back to your normal life. Like this whole movie, it portrays it really well about how like he wants to be still involved. He doesn't want to be forgotten now. He helped with this otherworldly kind of like battle. And then now he has to go back to high school and just live his normal life and no one knows about it. And he's texting Tony Stark and he's calling him. He's doing all these things, which is hilarious because that's what you'd do. You'd want to be involved. Don't forget about me, and like updating like, oh, I saved a guy's life and she gave me a churro. Like Tony Stark doesn't want to hear that shit. It's just a teenager.
Exactly. And I think, and this is just another movie. Iron Man did a great job with it too. But the whole Marvel universe has done such a great job recognizing how traumatized everyone is from the Battle of New York, from the blip, from like everything they see. And and Spider-Man's a great example. Like he's a teenager and all of a sudden like gods are appearing out of the sky and weird AIs are taking over. I mean, it's like everybody's just really messed up, like including Peter Parker.
Back on the origin story part is that there isn't really an origin story, but they have to tell the Spider-Man story is a story. It's he got his powers by radioactive spider. He fights crime, and he has that whole, what's the responsibility? I can't even. This is stupid how I don't remember this. With great power comes great responsibility, and that they didn't do an origin story, so there's no death of Uncle Ben, which caused him to get, like you've seen in the other two Spider-Man movies or origin stories. So having Tony Stark be that person, to be that like Uncle Ben character, that guidance person to you, the person you look up to, someone that like, brings you along, is an unbelievable way of doing it, but also making it so we all go, this is in the MCU. Like Iron Man is here. It's a bigger universe than just a Spider-Man movie by itself. And that's it. And I think that was a really well done in this movie to bring it along. I did
notice this time. Did you notice it? I never noticed for the last time I watched it in Far From Home that his suitcase was Ben's and it has his initials on it. I totally missed that in the first, but you were just mentioning Ben. I thought that was a really neat little Easter egg.
Yeah. There's small things they started adding in there as it went along too. Oh, there's that montage. So there's the montage at the beginning about Civil War. And then it goes into like him fighting crime. He's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, which is also a great, Easter egg in there. Why can't you just be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? And he's doing all these small little things where like he grabs the bike and steals, or the bike gets stolen. And he's like, "Is this anybody's bike?" And he puts it down and says, "Do not steal," on the bike. He goes, "Hey, there's a guy at a hot dog cart that says, 'Hey, Spider-Man, do a flip.'" And he does a flip, like whatever, which is kind of like what I think we would do too. Like we see someone like, you see a comedian, like tell a joke. But I looked at it, and I this is just me speculating out of the wazoo, that in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the guy videotaping on the bus saying, "I got to put this on YouTube," or whatever it is, when they're doing the fight on the trolley thing. Looked just like the guy on the
I cart. Looked it up.
And it just the way it looked at, I was like, "Oh my god, it's the same guy." Whether it is or not, because it's New York City versus San Francisco or whatever, but it did look like at least the same actor. Of it, I thought would be a great connection between the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Would be great.
It is the same actor. I looked that up. I don't know like what the official level, but I saw on a YouTube video where they were like, this was very clearly like this guy's a vlogger now, and like probably because of his Spider-Man video, he got a bunch of likes. So yeah, I did. I caught that too. I thought that was fantastic.
It's hilarious. So, other cool, funny things I have in here are like Hannibal Buress being the gym. First of all, Hannibal Buress is one of the funniest people on the earth, and him being the gym teacher, and then like showing the video, and he's on the wrong side of the TV. Like Captain America's on there, and he's like, "And your coach over here, or your teacher," and he's pointing this way when Hannibal Buress is on the other side. And then he goes, "We're gonna watch this short video from Captain America," and he's like, which I pretty much think he's a war criminal right now, but whatever. And he starts playing the video. I thought those small little things are unbelievable that I laughed so hard at. And like he does also, I think in the detention, when they're in detention and he's having the video play in the background, he's like, Zendaya or MJ. It's like, "You're not even in detention right now. What are you doing here?" He's like, "I like was it drawing people in distress?" And she draws a picture of the teacher. Hannah Buress. Aaron Davis, when Spider-Man or Peter Parker is in the parking garage, and he meets up with the guy and he talks to him, and he has that like dark interrogation voice.
Yes.
That's what's his name? I can't. Childish Gambino, Donald Glover.
Yes. There you go.
But Aaron Davis is the name of Miles Morales' uncle, and becomes the Prowler in that storyline of Miles Morales' Spider-Man. And so there's that theory, obviously, at some point, maybe that Donald Glover comes back as the Prowler, as Aaron Davis, as
it'd be great for that.
Miles. It would be fun, and I love that little. Even if it was just an homage to it, like we're not going to get into it or whatever. But this movie, and I probably think that the second movie, Far From Home, have two of the best reveals in Marvel, or best oh my god moments in the MCU, which is when the Vulture, Michael Keaton, opens the door and for when he's picking
that
up his
was
prom
great.
date. And it's just like, oh my God, my date's dad is the Vulture. Was awesome. And obviously thrown off because there's a mixed race couple, which is great. I love it. And that obviously threw him off because he wasn't I don't think Peter Parker going to the door was expecting the dad to be white. So that probably didn't help, it made us all go, oh my God. Which made it cool because then it was
misdirection.
Like, yeah. And so then the only person out there up until the post-credit scene in Far From Home that we're going to talk about a little bit, the only other person out there other than, Ned, knowing basically at that moment was the Vulture knew who he was.
Right.
And that goes into the post-credit scene where Vulture's in prison.
Yep.
And a guy walks by and he's like, I know who Spider-Man is. And there's a guy has a scorpion tattoo on his neck. And his theory is out that that's Scorpion, the villain that's right. becomes Scorpion at some point. So it was at the end of this movie, we only knew that like basically Ned knew and the Vulture knew. Tony Stark obviously knew and all the superheroes, but that was pretty cool, like little thing. At the time, Homecoming was amazing. I loved the movie so much, and then they came out with the second one was just even better. In my opinion.
When the first one came out, I was so in Spider-Man Burnout from Raimi, and then who was the second actor?
Andrew Garfield.
Yes, Andrew Garfield. And then I knew there was the MCU now, but I was like a lot of people, I was like, there's some Sony thing, and I was so disinterested, but I was like, it's Spider-Man, right? Yes. It's like Star Wars. It doesn't matter how bad it is, you watch it. And I was blown away. Yeah, it was like, as soon as I saw that one, like all the previous movies were like no longer my movie version of Spider-Man.
And there's still people out there that have that connection. I don't know what it is. It's weird to me. I mean, I've been into Marvel for years. Yep. Obviously the only things that I had really to watch back in the early 2000s on TV or on the movie theaters on Blu-ray or whatever, or Blu-ray at that time, DVD and VHS, was the Raimi Spider-Mans and X-Men, the original X-Men movies. And so what else did I really have to go off of? And I don't know. It never really drew me in like these movies do. And I don't know if it's the interconnectivity of it all.
I think it is.
That does it and that's maybe why the TV shows, I liked the Netflix Daredevil and all those. I liked how those all connected to each other, but it didn't connect to the more broader thing, and why Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the very first season, was really cool. I like watching that, but then it didn't actually connect fully to the broader MCU. Yep. And so these Disney Plus series, maybe that's why I love those so much too, is because they actually connect to the MCU in a way that
it helps.
That's time, really I think. One of the big things that got me really, really, really deep dive into comic books from Marvel was the fact that I could see Thor fighting in Thor, but then in the Avengers movie, Avengers comic book, he's fighting in the other angle in the same battle.
Yep.
In the crossover. So the second movie, Far From Home, released 2 years later, almost to the day, July 2nd, 2019. Yep. So it was just the July 4th weekend, releases. $160 million. So it actually was surprisingly cheaper to make the second movie.
Yeah, maybe more CGI or something.
CGI actually technically is cheaper than people expected, to be honestly. But it made $1.13 billion with a B.
Yeah, there you go. That's amazing.
The funny thing is, on IMDb, they're both rated 7.4. So they're right even with each other. However, the critics rated it 90% compared to 92 for the first one, but 95 for the audience compared to 87 for the first one. So again, on average, I think the second movie was more well accepted, but part of it might have been that we were like, okay, we know what we're getting. We're not getting a reboot thing. This is the new next thing. It also was post Endgame. So, so there's that to it as well. I was listening to another person's podcast a couple of days ago, and they were mentioning about how there's a possibility that Marvel would have wanted this movie actually released in somewhere in November, December of 19, to get itself farther away from Endgame's releases in that time. And it was just like Disney or Sony was like, no, summer blockbuster. Obviously, financially, it worked out.
Right.
But like they were saying, maybe a little bit longer away from, like, pushed a couple of months later. Sure. It would have been like just that further away from Marvel from Endgame. Because honestly, I will tell you right now, I think what's his name? Jeremy Renner just mentioned that the only movie he won't watch over again from MCU is Endgame, and obviously it's a very impactful movie for Hawkeye's perspective.
Of course.
But that's a movie you have to sit in. That's a movie you have to like watch and just be like, oh my gosh, the impact of what happened here is pretty powerful compared to the past, 10, 11 years of what Marvel Cinematic Universe has gone through.
Oh yeah.
But they did it well when they opened this movie up with the Iron Man tribute video. It's probably one of my favorite clips in MCU right now for funny wise, is that tribute video. That's just like if we were in high school, we were making a video about something. The comic, there's a Comic Sans font, so it's that cheap, cheesy, stupid. Some of the photos were scanned in or taken of a photo of a camera of a photo. The transitions were every cheesy transition you can get into, and then the final photo has a Getty Images overlay on it. Like you're not going to pay for the photo, so you're going to use the photo of something that says Getty Images on it. The guy is like talking and he swears, first of all, and he's like, no one cares anymore. And then a boom microphone dips down into the screen. It's just this really, you could tell it's a really horribly made tribute video to tribute to Iron Man, the death of Iron Man. And classic opening to a movie. Honestly, one of my favorite openings to a movie in a long time.
Literally, my first note I have jotted down here is talk about the opening for the memoriam, because it's fantastic.
It's such a serious thing to like Spider-Man. It makes sense. Like it's a deep, depressing thing, and you can see it throughout plays throughout the movie and plays throughout the rest of the MCU. But it's just this funny, like it makes sense that the blip happened and then Tony Stark died and all these things are real. But it's like they were doing their best to play a memoriam to it, but all we can do at home is laugh a little bit because it's like, oh my God, this is so cheesy. It's so badly made. And then a blip. The other part is the blip when they're talking about it on that thing. They're talking about the blip, and they talk about how they blipped away during the basketball game, and they all blip back in the basketball game. And there's like they're playing the band's playing, and the ball gets thrown. And it like knocks the guy out with a trombone. It was like they blip back, and they were like, it's just a perfect example of what the blip did in the world. That they all just blipped away, and then everyone about their lives, and they blipped back. And like how Marissa Tomei's Aunt May character thought people, she's like, I blipped back and the person was someone living in my apartment and the person there thought I was the mistress.
Exactly. The blip stuff is really interesting. Like this last couple times we've done a podcast, I've been thinking about it more, and like Shang-Chi actually talks quite a bit about the blip. And it's a big deal. Like it's hard for me to wrap my head around because I can't remember like who was there for 5 years and who wasn't, and how different that is, because all of those people like suffered the trauma of that 5 years and the other half didn't at all. They just reappeared one day.
And so there's that intertwines throughout everything. And it's like, it's funny how characters now have to, like actors who play characters on the TV or the movies have to now explain to people if they were blipped or not. Like this new Hawkeye show, it was like people were like, "Oh, Kate Bishop, was she blipped or was she there the whole time?" And so people, it's a whole forever is going to be one of those things. Whenever they introduce new characters, when the Eternals came out, they're like, "Oh, the Eternals couldn't blip because they're not, they're extraterrestrial and extra celestial beings or whatever." But they're just, that's the whole thing, is who blipped, who didn't blip, how the age, someone aged 5 years older and they had to restart the school year and all that stuff. It's a fascinating way to like continue on with what happened in the events of Endgame and Infinity War, but without having to like talk about the actual battle. It's just like, this is what happened, and people know.
I love that they address it. I think it makes it feel so much more like I'm the type, I think you are too. We talk about it. Like if they just now pretended like nothing happened with the blip and Thanos, like I would just no matter what, everything I watched, I would be like, why are you people not talking about this?
Well, yeah, and it's that same thing that happens in this movie when they're like, "Hey, we need you to help fight these elementals," and they're like, "Why don't you call Thor? He's off world. It's unreachable. Captain Marvel, she's off world. Captain, whoever, not available." And they actually bring up the fact that there are other superheroes in this world. We need you, Spider-Man, right now, because that's the only person that's available. Whereas in previous films, early on in Marvel, they didn't do that as much. And it was like Iron Man's dealing with this, huge otherworldly type battle, and he's the only one fighting it. And so it's like, come on, like we have other Avengers or people helping you fight for these things. But they actually pointed that out the same way they're pointing out the blip happening and all that stuff. And eventually it's going to get old. Eventually, 2 or 3 years from now, some of these movies come out, it's like, okay, we know that happened, move on, because there'll be other things that are going to happen from this point on.
Now they'll all be talking about the trauma of the multiverse or what, and whatever happens there. It really is like the poor people in these movies, like, must be terrified.
Yes, exactly. And it's a world that's a crazy world to live in. I just can't imagine. We haven't really talked. We'll eventually do Infinity War and Endgame as a review on here, but the repercussions to what happened in those films is always going to impact the world we live in the MCU. I say, not like obviously the world we live in. It impacted a bunch of people. It impacted me emotionally. It was tough.
Of course,
10 years of Tony Stark on TV and then him not being there anymore. It's an impactful thing. But the blipping part is great, and the tease, you talked about the multiverse, the tease of a multiverse in this movie, and it ending up not being a multiverse was also a kind of like a Marvel, like, and Sony being like, like we did. Because when they talk about Mysterio, he's talking about another dimension or another universe, and then Peter Parker's like, oh my gosh, that's only a theory, it's actually real, and come to find out that it actually wasn't. It actually wasn't. He was just a normal human being with some good tech. The connectivity. This is another thing that Taylor and I talked about how like it connects to Iron Man in multiple times in this movie when they're in that bar, and he gives them Edith to Mysterio, and the illusion goes away, and it's the character that was with Obadiah Stane at the arc reactor. Will, I think his name was. It showed that Clint was Beck was actually at that MIT commencement thing with the barf. And showing those back and connecting and retconning in a sense, not actually having to retcon anything, but actually just putting them in that you didn't see them because they weren't on camera. That stuff is amazing. Again, it brings that whole connectivity of the MCU together, that these characters are in this movie, but they started off in other movies, including all the way back in Iron Man 1 with that.
I love the guy that was at the arc reactor. I think I made that connection the first time I saw it, but I didn't really think about it. And then this time we just, for one of our last podcasts, watched the Iron Man movies. And I love that he's the guy that goes, I'm not Tony Stark. And now he's like working with this like crappy off-brand Tony Stark wannabe. And just like you said, what a great, why would you even remember that guy or like bring him back? Like it's awesome.
Can you imagine him getting the phone call? The actor, hey, by the way, we want you to come back and be in this new movie 10 years later. And you're going to play the same character. It's
wild. And he downloads some stuff in so he's not done yet, which is wild. I mean, then you think we have the multiverse coming up and this dude who can still make you think you're not in reality, like blah.
And again, one of the greatest reveals again in the first movie was the whole Vulture opening the door and bam, it's Tony Stark or Peter Parker's date's dad is the villain of the movie. And in this movie, Mysterio making you think it's all these elementals and making you think there's other dimensions and other worlds, other universes, and come to find out it's all just an illusion. Again, fascinating. And the multiverse doesn't actually exist. Like, well, it does technically. We'll find that out later on in other movies. But that Jake Gyllenhaal wasn't actually talking about an actual multiverse. He was just making shit up to make his illusion better. It's fascinating to me. Sorry, I'm getting a text message. The Mysterio character, the Jake Gyllenhaal character, Jake Gyllenhaal kicked ass. I never pictured, like, I'm a Jake Gyllenhaal fan. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. One of my favorite movies of all time is Zodiac, where Jake Gyllenhaal plays the reporter. And I just never pictured him being an MCU movie for some weird reason. And he kicked butt on this movie for sure. Barf, again, was a huge one. I wrote that down as a notes, the arc reactor dude. Oh, when he was making the suit, it got me kind of emotional when he was making the suit on the plane, and it played the the AC/DC song, and he goes, "Oh, I love Led Zeppelin," and then you could definitely tell that Jon Favreau's character. First of all, we didn't talk about in the first kind of review of Homecoming.
Right,
Jon Favreau's character is amazing in these movies. Happy Hogan plays amazing character in this movie, but when you could tell he looks back and he reminds him of when he plays the music and the music's playing and he's working on a suit, you could tell that Happy Hogan was thinking and reminiscing about Tony. And that was a very touching moment that they didn't have to say anything, but if we knew what happened, it's just seeing the next level of smart young men creating a suit It just was like, it was perfect to him. It was very good, very, very, very good.
And I love Happy's budding relationship with Aunt May. Like that is the greatest. Like I just, that in this watch through just cracked me up. Like
it's funny too. I like that at the very end they have a like talk, and he's like, I gotta talk to you guys about something, and you think he's gonna tell them he's Spider-Man, but come to find out he's telling him, are you guys in a relationship? And then Happy Hogan's like, yes, we are. And she's like, well, I don't know if we have labels on it. It was just, that whole thing was awesome. Yep. Especially how in the comic books, Aunt May is this old lady. To have like
exactly
Marissa Tomei, like one of the hot women of the generation that we watch movies in, is his aunt, and that Happy Hogan would want to be. And the fact that Tony Stark was kind of like almost like talking about how she was hot and all that stuff in the previous movie.
Right.
It's just funny to see Happy Hogan do that. And I love the fact, thinking back on the plane, and just reminding me of this Tony Stark connection, was that the head of security's password for his phone was password.
Yo, that's right.
He's like, what's your password? He goes, password. He goes, no, what's your password? He goes, password. He goes, you're the head of security and your password is password. He goes, yeah, I'm not very happy about that. I'm not proud of that, or something like that. I was like, this is amazing. That's the comedy. I think it's a funny movie. It's well made. The connection between him and MJ, the Ned stuff, the using Edith to try to kill his classmate. Is he a target? And he tries to bomb the classmate on the bus. All
Brad.
Of that stuff. Yes, Brad. Is Brad a target? Yes, Brad's a target.
Yeah.
Executing Brad. I was like, what the hell?
And it says like, it's like deploying kill machine.
Yes. And
he's like, no. Please don't deploy kill machine.
And when they went to this, the other two characters that are actually going to be, we'll talk about in a second here. We'll talk about the No Way Home preview, is the two teachers. The teachers that are on the field trip and stuff like that. Yep. They are going to be in the next film too. So they're honestly classic characters in both films. They are. When they went to the not spelling bee, but the
I know the science competition. I don't know what the decathlon or something.
Yes. Science decathlon.
Yeah.
And then when they went on the field trip, the two characters, like, it's just with the comedy they have in there. I mean, I've obviously loved one of the teachers is from the show Silicon Valley, which Taylor and I absolutely love.
Is hilarious. Yep.
And then the other one is he's like, hey man, I want to be a cool teacher right now. Stop taking pictures of other people in the bathroom. I don't care if it's in the urinal or in the stalls. Just don't do it. It's like it's kids.
But I'm glad you mentioned it, because I wrote down a note I wanted to put. It's like such a little clip, but the guy from Silicon Valley, like his little story to Peter Parker is awful. Where when the blip happened, his wife faked her death and ran off with her personal trainer. Like, because he's talking about the like emotional toll of the blip, and then he's like, well, except that she actually hadn't died. She just faked it. But I was like, oh, this is the saddest story ever for this poor guy.
And the fact that he goes, it was a fake funeral. Well, it was a real funeral, but it was not. She wasn't actually dead.
She wasn't actually dead, which is horrible, because he's saying like it was a real funeral for me.
It was so that again, those characters. And I was telling Taylor as we were watching the film, I was like, are they going to be in the next movie? And they are going to be in, at least according to the internets, they're going to be in the next movie, which is amazing, because those two guys they were friggin' hilarious.
They are.
Flash Thompson again, great, because he's a villain in the comic books to Peter Parker. So who knows? Maybe that's the person who's going to be one of the villains, not villains, but one of the people, the antagonists, which is awesome, because I love how much he hates Peter Parker, but Flash is in love with Spider-Man. The idea that he's like enamored by this superhero character, but he's actually hates the person who actually is in the suit, which is pretty funny. But yeah, as a whole, overall, the second movie was much better. Not much better, on par with the first one, and slightly better. I think the graphics were unbelievable.
Yep.
I think Jake Gyllenhaal again was unbelievable. What I do think, and this is something that a lot of people have talked about, is the perfectness of one villain in each of these movies. Something that previous Spider-Man movies have not been able to. They've introduced too many villains and too many things too quickly. That was
the thing for a while in like every superhero movie, which is, even just outside of Marvel, it would be like, here's the next Batman movie and 18 villains. Like
it was like they were afraid that they were never going to be able to make a movie again. We got to use these villains because people are going to want this villainous movie. But to have like Vulture in the first one, again, a character they hadn't done yet. Again, another way of making a reboot of a series without having to reboot the whole thing. And then a second character, which is Mysterio, which again they hadn't done yet. And so having 2 new villains for Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's been around for years, since the 60s, and you're telling me they can't use some of their other villains they have. And so doing that and having those new characters come in are great. And then going into this, we'll talk about the post-credit scene here in a second, but going into the next movie, again, you're not even getting new characters, you're getting old characters that are reappearing. So we're not rebooting Dr. Octopus and not rebooting Lizard, they're just bringing the old ones in.
That's like the most genius way to bring the Sinister Six in for a while ever, which is to have like a multiverse Sinister Six. Like when that kind of clicked, I was like, that is the best idea ever, because then you don't ever have to deal with the Sinister Six again and trying to manage why those 6 bad guys work together. Like, great idea.
And to be honest with you, let's talk about that 1 second. Let's put a pin in that. Let's remember, I want to actually talk about that. But so post-credit scene, which there's 2 actual in this movie. Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Again, unbelievable to have J. Jonah Jameson come back from the original Spider-Man movies, who is a perfect J. Jonah Jameson. Is unbelievable. And they have it, as it says on the screen when they're flying around New York City with Zendaya, it says dailybugle.net, which is, again, the same thing I loved about the Iron Man films we talked about, Iron Man 1, by modernizing the original story, the fact that no one is going to read a paper anymore. And so that like you have to bring it back as a website. And that's huge for me when they wrote the dailybugle.net. Him saying that Spider-Man is, he's obviously now wanted for murder because they think that he killed, Mysterio, and also that it's Peter Parker. And that was huge. And that was like jaw dropping. That was like one of the few post-credit scenes that are almost more jaw dropping than the actual, hour and a half film you just watched ahead of time.
Without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. In fact, I wonder, probably not many. I wonder how many people didn't see the first post-credit scene that were just like, well, that was weird, and turned it off. Because man, it's like the biggest deal ever.
It's huge. And it's, again, it's kind of the service to us people who are big Marvel fans that go, oh my God. And that should have been, that was the first telltale sign of a interdimensional multiverse thing, because that was J. Jonah Jameson from the original movie. So originally we were just like, oh, it's cool, he's coming back as a cameo, this is awesome, whatever. Now we found out more that the fact that there's not just that, like there's other people. I think he's playing the J. Jonah Jameson in,
I do too,
this
but
Tom Holland's universe, but like the idea that they're connecting all of it together is pretty cool too. And the second post-credit scene is more broadly Marvel. So we don't have to touch on it that much because it really has to do with like Secret Invasion, the TV show coming out, and things in the future. Captain Marvel, Marvels. And that's that Fury and Hill were in this movie. We didn't touch on that much about the movie, but they were really good. Nick Fury and Maria Hill are Skrulls, and that they're hanging out with Skrulls, and they don't know how well. We don't know how long they've been Skrulls, but they've been Skrulls throughout this movie at least. And that's a more broader MCU thing to move forward.
Well, and they gave Tony the glasses. What was?
Yes.
Did I miss something with that, or is that we don't know?
I don't know a lot. I don't. Again, this is. I guess it has something to do with this, but the Spider-Man-esque of it, I think it's less Spider-Man centric than it is big MCU, which would actually be kind of a fun episode if we literally just went through and watched all the post-credit scenes and kind of broke them down, how they connected to the next film and how the future and the Marvel created the post-credit scene in a sense, because there has been other ones, I think, for other films, but it's really been one of those things that, like, because Marvel did it in the MCU years ago, tons of people are doing it now. Because I guess in the Afterlife, Ghostbusters Afterlife is also a post-credit scene now. And so, like, it's not even a Marvel thing; it's a Ghostbusters thing, and they're doing post-credit scenes.
Well, everybody will do it now.
But yeah, so Spider-Man being Peter Parker is the big one. That's the huge one for this specific movie. The other one, I think, is more looking towards the future than it is that. Gotcha. So, but yeah, I thought they were both great. I thought they were amazing. I honestly think that the rating, the critic rating, and the audience ratings, and the IMDb ratings on those are perfect for them. I think that the 90th percentile for those movies, it's up there. They're definitely 2 of the better Marvel movies. And they did Spider-Man well. I think they did it right. Tom Holland has been an amazing Spider-Man so far. And we're going to get more of it on December 17th, only in theaters.
Yeah.
Adam,
I know
and I
that
are
does
like, what the
stink.
hell? Come
Ugh.
on, people. I
It is,
understand.
man.
It's financially, it's probably the experience of it. It's probably going to be
Yep.
great. It's just one of those things that I wish. Forget the pandemic. I just like watching things at home in the comfort of my own home. I have a big
Exactly.
enough. We have a big enough TV now. I have surround sound now. I can, have an adult beverage if I want, or make my own popcorn, or get up and
Yep.
pause it and go to the bathroom. All of those things are huge, and I honestly would spend a premium on it. If you told me it was $50
Sure.
to watch it opening weekend at home,
Yep.
I would probably pay $50, not even to own it, just to rent it, so I could stay home and not go to the theaters.
Especially when you consider like you can have your spouse watch it with you, you can have your friend over, you can have 20 friends over. Like, I mean, it really for two people watching it, $50 isn't a bad deal.
I'm wondering if this is just a sidebar here pretty quickly for our listeners, is what if you did it based in your area? So basically, your computer, your TV has, GPS location services on it.
Yep.
That based in your area, so that theaters wouldn't go out of business. That it is $50, but $10 of that went to your local theater, the big theater in your area, or whatever, the closest theater, or get distributed to whatever theater. I mean, obviously places like LA, California, all those things have multiple theaters. But if you're like lived a block away from a theater in New York City and you bought it online, that some of that went to that theater, like the theater sold it to you, not the direct place. So you went onto the theater's website and bought it from the theater and played it at your own home. That it would keep theaters in business, so you wouldn't take away from that. It would be way more expensive, so that you would actually have to choose between whether going to the theater or watching it at home. I just think there's something to do in the future, because again, other people will argue with me and are different than me, that they think that going to the theater is way better. I personally think watching it at home is better, but that's just me.
And I think it's the argument we've made before of just anything, whether it's comics and different types. But I mean, my thing is, I totally get wanting to watch a movie on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what I want, but I'm like you. My thing is just we have such good technology. Just release it simultaneously. Like, I want to watch it at home. I'm willing to pay more because I might have a friend over. But like you said, I just feel like the physical theater isn't even as necessary anymore as people think it is. It's just, that's just something that it's being marketed to you.
And I understand there's the copyright stuff and the stealing and the illegal stuff of it, but still, I still think that if you made it cost enough, you'd have to make the decision whether you went to the theater or not. Like, if you literally said to me it was $50, that's what pay-per-view, people make the decision to watch pay-per-view fights.
All the time.
It's the same thing. So if you told me it was $49.99, you rent it for 48 hours after you press play or whatever it may be, like they do on the rentals on Amazon and stuff like that. You might make $1.6 billion off of something because of the fact that you have it in theaters for cheaper, but at home for more expensive. I don't know. That's something we could, in the future, it's going to I hate to say it because I don't want businesses like the theaters in Bangor and stuff like that in our area to go out of business, but like, it's going to happen. Like, it's going to happen. And the only theaters that are going to be standing, and in my opinion, are your 4DX, like those theaters that are like blow the wind on your face and it rains a little bit on you, or theaters that have the full dining experience that go with it, so you can get drinks and food and stuff like that delivered to your table. Those I think will be around forever. It's the theaters, the small theaters that just have crappy lighting and really crappy sticky floors. Like, it's not experience that I want to experience anymore. Like, it's not. I
think you hit the nail on the head. That's it. It's like, anymore, I don't want to go be with 200 people, like
people talking, crying, laughing, making out.
I mean, I've never been to a movie that someone hasn't annoyed. I mean, very minor maybe, but annoyed me the entire movie. Like, why would I want that?
And if you go with someone who hasn't seen the movie before, or haven't seen it, the movies leading up to it, they're like, hey, what's this? What's this? You can pause the movie at home and go,
exactly,
and then continue on with it, which you can't do in the theater. So I think there's something to it. And there's 100%. Something to Josh Moulton's place at Queen City Cinema Club in downtown Bangor allows you to do that with the after the theaters. Like, so it obviously has to be on a movie.
That's a totally different experience. Like, that kind of thing, I think, is where everything is going.
Private
Queen City Cinema, right? Which is these small private theaters. Get like 10 of your friends, bring your own food or buy their food, whatever, and hang out. Yeah. I think that's the way to go.
So this movie comes out, to get back on track here. The movie comes out December 17th, only in theaters, and then it will be out a little bit after that. So we did find out last week, or this past week, that Eternals is going to be hitting Disney Plus in the beginning of January. So that was November 12th, I think it came out, or November 5th. Let's see here. November 5th, it came out. And then Eternals will be on Disney Plus on January 12th. So we're talking a little over a month and a half. So if this follows the same trajectory, it won't be on Disney Plus because it's a Sony picture. But if it follows the same trajectory as Venom, because Venom just came out too, Venom 2, that it's probably going to be about 2 months, month and a half to 2 months before we see it on digital, which will allow people to see it online, which is pretty cool. John Watts is returning as the director, or I say is returning. Returned as a director because the movie's done. John Watts is the director, and Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, who wrote the last film, are returning to write this or wrote this film as well, which is pretty cool. Yep. Tom Holland's returning, Zendaya, Jacob Batalon, Marissa Tomei, Tony Revolori, I can't say the name, J.K. Simmons, Jon Favreau. Those are all people that were in the last movie that are coming back. Of course, other people as well we mentioned. But seeing the addition of Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, Benedict Wong as Wong, Jamie Foxx as Electro, Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, William Dafoe as Green Goblin, Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, Rhys Ifans as Lizard, and possibly, again, there's rumors and speculation. We haven't seen any actual footage of Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire returning for this or coming to this film.
Exactly, yep.
But if it doesn't, I honestly, right now, Adam, I'll bet you $100 right now they're both in this movie. Like, there's no way. Even though Andrew Garfield said multiple times he's not in this movie, he's in this freaking movie. There's no way.
They could be in an excellent post-credit scene with the new movie where it's like you're like, oh man, they didn't do it, and then the post-credit scene is a bunch of like Peter Parkers sitting around and like in a support group talking to each other. Something would be hilarious.
But didn't they learn this in freaking the first of the sequels to Star Wars with Luke Skywalker? The entire film, we were like, oh my god, when's Luke Skywalker coming? And he's at the end of the freaking movie for 30 seconds. He's at the end of the movie.
Exactly.
Like we learned that. We got all, maybe that's the reason why they haven't actually said they're in this movie, is because they don't want you to be disappointed with the little number of time they're actually in the movie. Yep. So like, you're not like, oh my God, we all knew that Luke Skywalker was coming back in that movie, the sequel, the trilogy sequel. And we were disappointed because of how little he was in that first film.
Yep.
And so maybe that's the same thing. They're trying to like, well, they're actually only in the whole movie for like 5 minutes. And so we don't want to watch this 2-hour movie that has them in there for 5 minutes. We're all excited to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And so people are just like, let it down. I don't know. The extreme rumors are that Kirsten Dunst as MJ, Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, and then Charlie Cox as Daredevil are also in this film. But those are one of those ones that I actually looked up online. They're like someone told someone who told someone who told someone who told someone they're going to be in this movie. So the biggest thing to me is all those villains and then Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, I'd be okay. They talk about the Charlie Cox as Daredevil, who was on the Netflix Daredevil series, and they're talking about rebooting him with him as Daredevil. I'd be cool with that too. That's pretty cool. Don't really need to see Kirsten Dunst or Emma Stone. It doesn't matter. We have our MJ in this movie, which is Zendaya. We don't need those characters again. Maybe when those characters are coming through the portals,
it'd be fun to catch a glimpse of them. Yeah. The one I thought was I just read an article the other day, so you've probably seen it too. Nicholas Hammond, that played the 1970s live action Spider-Man.
Yes.
It's just a funny. I interviewed him recently, and he was like, "I would have loved to have been in these," and he's like, "And they never contacted me."
No.
And I was like, "What? That would have been the best." Like,
and maybe that would be a cool, like I said, have Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and Tom Holland be the Spider-Mans in this movie, and then there's a post-credit scene, just a funny one, not like a homage to the next films, but more a funny one where it's like the cartoon Spider-Ham from Into the Spider-Verse. Like the old school cartoon TV show actor, the Spider-Man, in his Amazing Friends animation people, all those people go sitting around in a circle, and some of them could be their animated characters, some of them could be the actors who played them, but they're not them, just as a fun thing. And it would be hilarious to see that. But I don't know. But we mentioned, I had to put a pin in it, but Peter Parker. Now I can't remember what it was. The multiverse is really what the biggest thing about this is. Like, we teased the multiverse in the first movie or second movie, and this is actually happening now. This is the new big event, the multiverse coming in here, that we have all these. The Sinister Six.
Yes.
That's what it was. So my biggest thing is Spider-Man. If you look at the big picture of Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, big picture of Spider-Man, he has a lot of villains, but that's over what now 60 years of Spider-Man fighting in
Oh
comic
God,
books.
yes, yep.
He has these villains. If you look at the MCU, there's these villains that are villains to a bunch of different people, right? So you have like Iron Man has these villains that are also like Thor's villains at some point because of the Avengers and things like that. If you just created the Sinister Six in the Spider-Man world, that's a lot of villains that Spider-Man don't like Spider-Man, but don't they don't not like Iron Man too or
exactly
Hulk or,
so or like why did they not come help him?
And so my biggest thing is this is a perfect way to say the Sinister Six, and it's like Avengers number 50 comes out this week, or this is the next week, last week in comic books, and it's going to introduce the Avengers of the multiverse. And I wouldn't mind there being a Sinister Six of the multiverse where they like can communicate through multiverses, and they're a big group that gets together and fights heroes, but they're not all from the same universe because that makes more sense. Right. Like Andrew Garfield's, totally villains are one couple of villains, and Tobey Maguire's villains are a couple, and then you have the Vulture, and you have Mysterio as the Tom Holland villains, and they all get together and they do their Sinister Six thing or whatever. I just think the Sinister Six for 6 people that basically just don't like Spider-Man, it's stupid, honestly.
Yes. Well, no, and like it really, that's why it only makes sense in this kind of multiverse way. Like, and it's brilliant in a multiverse way because when you're done with it, you can just be done with it. Like,
and so
because you said that's a lot. It's
a lot to go over, and it's one of those things you talked about, too many villains in one movie. And this is I think it's awesome that they have this many villains in one movie because of how they're introducing them. They're from other universes, and that makes more sense opening the multiverse. Doctor Strange has been said multiple times not to mess with the multiverse. So that it's funny how he does this. So obviously we've seen in What If, is this the real Doctor Strange, or is this a dark Doctor Strange? Did Doctor Strange mess up when he was doing something because Peter Parker was talking too much? And so there's all these, like, this trailer was freaking amazing. The teaser trailer and the second trailer.
It's nuts.
And in the end, my question, I guess, to the world is, does this multiverse close at the end of this one and we deal with other multiverse stuff with Loki and stuff like that, and the Doctor Strange and a multiverse? Or is this like at the end of this movie, is it a big cliffhanger that the multiverse is open wide and they have to deal with that in the multiverse, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness? I don't know. It's so fascinating how much I don't know about this movie, even though in a world we know everything about everything.
Well, that's why, and I was just getting ready to say, it's like it's not even like I think, it's their brand. I know something wild is going to happen in Far From Home, like absolutely wild. Like, I mean, I don't even think revealing, say, like that Strange Supreme is even close to like probably the level of wild that's going to get revealed.
And the Easter eggs they put in the trailers to try to figure out where these people, and now we know for a fact that the multiverse is kind of open in this, and that's why all these different characters came into this. One of the rumors I read online is that in this you're going to hear stories from like Jamie Foxx or Electro and all these other ones who coming from their own universes. And it sounds like someone wrote online that Jamie Foxx, the rumor is that Jamie Foxx killed Iron Man in his universe.
Oh,
which is pretty cool. So you're hearing that kind of stuff too. I love hearing that. Like,
that would be cool.
The Iron Man we really don't care about because it's another universe, but seeing that kind of thing. And then just seeing some of these characters that you haven't seen in a long time in an actual good movie. It's going to be really fun to see. There's a reason why it's so freaking long of a movie. Like the movie's
how long?
I want to say it was like they haven't, I don't think they've put it out there, but they may have because of the tickets going on sale. Oops, what the hell? I'm gonna look it up right now. Runtime of
which, while you're looking it up, I'll throw in for the tickets on sale. There is an exclusive NFT drop if you pre-purchase your ticket to Far From Home through AMC.
And it's funny you mentioned that. I was actually going to bring that up too. Is that you being a big NFT person? Are there people out there buying tickets through AMC that don't have an AMC theater around them just to get the NFT, and they're not even going to go?
Oh God, yeah, including me probably.
That's what I'm saying. You probably buy a ticket and there's no AMC theater in this area to go, so you end up having to spend the money for AMC, get the free NFT, and then if we end up going to theaters to see it, you have to buy a ticket somewhere else, because that ticket won't transfer, I don't think, over to that theater. So that's an interesting little way to get more money, I guess, to get the NFT stuff. But it's 2.5
God
hours.
knows. Who knows, man? AMC is, ever since the meme stock thing, they're trying to go wherever they can, which is like NFTs and like social media, all this weird stuff. So Anybody listening, I'm not saying go buy a ticket to get this NFT. I don't know what it is, and it might not be worth anything.
It's 2.5 hours though. That's a long movie.
There you go.
It really is a long movie.
That is a really long.
But people are like, oh my gosh, it's a long movie to sit there. And it's like the perfect movie to me is about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. Like that's the perfect movie to me. Hour and 15 minutes is just too small. I think you're missing some stuff when you cut 15, 20 minutes out of a movie. And then there's movies that need to be that long. Endgame, 3 hours long. It has to be that long. It just has to be. But that's also one of the reasons why I think this movie is so long. Because if it is, in a sense, the last solo Spider-Man movie in the MCU, right. Like if Tom Holland comes back and plays a couple of roles throughout the next couple of years in other movies, kind of like what Captain America and Iron Man have done, and this is the last solo one in this thing, you need to send him out with a bang. And the No Way Home part of it leads me to believe that he goes into a different universe with MJ. The other theory is, this being the last of a trilogy, do they kill someone? Does someone die? Does Happy die? There's a theory out there is Happy's one of the ones that potentially could die because they never saw Uncle Ben die. So maybe this is the Uncle Ben.
I could see that for sure. The
other reason why the Uncle Ben could be is because does Aunt May die? Does Aunt May die in this movie because of that as well?
Sure.
The other theory is that Ned dies, because it's his best friend. And then again, MJ dying, which is always the one that's like his girlfriend dies. Yep. But I don't think we need that one. I think the biggest one to me, the most impactful one to me, would either be Aunt May as doing that as the Uncle Ben, or Ned dying. I think
they would be both really good.
That would be traumatic to it. I don't think I would be really sad and very upset if they kill off Happy Hogan, because they could just put him as a B character in every single Marvel movie and I'd be happy about it.
I was gonna say, unless he just doesn't want to keep doing it, I can't imagine like not wanting to be available to just pop up wherever you want in the MCU. Because I agree, that would be a huge death, like, because he's been in it for so long. But I think so would Aunt May. That would be a weird twist that in this one it's the death of Aunt May that we see. That'd be wild.
And then the other theory is that, and I don't think it's going to happen, but the X-Men are being introduced through this as somehow, like not fully introduced, but like there's this like weird thing to it. And that was that there's a scene of Electro, I believe, by the Statue of Liberty. And there's that X-Men scene with the Statue of Liberty where they're in the top of it.
Sure.
And, so on that is
if they overlapped those events, that would be wild.
And that Electro in that is actually in the same universe as.
That's crazy.
Would be crazy. So those are kind of things, but that's the thing we can do. And I have no problem with this. Like, the people who have a problem with the multiverse should just shove it. I'm sorry. I want to be blunt and honest about it, because I think the multiverse brings in so much more depth to what we've had a history of Marvel movies that allows us to do this. And if you do this with Spider-Man, there's no reason why you can't do this with X-Men and Fantastic Four and the Netflix Disney show, or Netflix Marvel shows, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Well,
and honestly, Nick Fury from the 1990s or whatever, when what's his face played him, from Baywatch. Hasselhoff played him. Like, what's stopping you from just having look at this Hasselhoff as Nick Fury and move on?
Oh yeah,
just have fun with it. And I think they have the ability to do it. We all want this retro, nostalgic view on things. This is a way to do it, and a way to do it clean and crisp. Well, and you can seal off that universe or kill that universe like they did on
exactly. Well, and here's the reality, and you've said this many times before, but it's like, first of all, Marvel has always been crystal clear that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a different thing. So if what's hurting your feelings is it's not like the comic books, then what? Like, there's nothing I can do for you. It's just kind of. And the other one is that the fact that X-Men and Fantastic Four aren't in the MCU is massive. And the fact that they're even trying to come up with a story, they could just make them appear and most people would be happy that they were there. So that's it's just, I can't think of a better way to do it that isn't stupid than what they're doing.
Well, see, what I want, and again, we're talking in the multiverse here as we talk about Spider-Man Far From Home or No Way Home, is what I would love personally, what I would want is that I don't want the X-Men of the 2000s, the early 2000s, the first
No,
X-Men movies
God,
as
no.
the X-Men in the MCU. That's not what I'm trying
No,
to say. What I'm
not at
saying is
all.
that you can say they are X-Men and that they exist in another universe, a multiverse that you can visit if you needed to see what's going on or whatever, and that Hugh Jackman as Wolverine did exist. It's not, we don't wipe it clean like some other people are doing with certain movies and retrofitting and retconning. Kind of like what they do with Jurassic Park, is they like, Jurassic Park 3 does not exist in that Jurassic Park world. Jurassic Park 1 and 2 do, and then it's Jurassic World, and so on. That they just kind of like forgot about Jurassic Park 3, which is like I said, you could, with the multiverse part of it, is you can make things exist, but then just forget about them.
Sure.
Like the and it's even more funny is that like Johnny Storm was played by Chris Evans, so that to me is even more of a way to make it funny and like play homage to the fact that Johnny Storm played another Marvel character in another universe. Like, wait, aren't you Captain America? I was like, well, in my universe, I'm Johnny Storm. I love that aspect of it.
That's awesome.
So do that, but then close it off or whatever. Like make it part of continuity, but not continuity of the current Earth 616 continuity, which I'd like to see Fantastic Four and the X-Men and Mutants as part of 616.
Yes.
I have a feeling they might just do like another world that kind of collapses in on each other. Or they visit back and forth just to keep them separate, but still part of the MCU, and they know each other exist. But I do think that going back and having Hugh Jackman make a reprisal role in a cameo as Wolverine to kind of be like, oh, that's our Wolverine from our childhood, and then move on and have a new character by Wolverine. Completely okay with that. That's what I would like. And I think this is the beginning of it with Spider-Man. I think this one, and then it leads into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Loki season 2, all that stuff, and then you have Ant-Man and Quantumania and those kind of things. So there's all kinds of these multiverse things coming out, and I'm like so excited for it. And I think
I am too.
We're gonna get so much of it on. And Taylor and I had talked about it. We may actually, and as much as we don't want to go to a theater and sit down and do that, we may end up going on like the Sunday morning of opening weekend, like 11 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully it's snowing out so that no one wants to go to the theaters, and we're just sitting there all by ourselves with our masks on and watching the movie. Just because I don't know if I'll be able to get to the weekend. Like I don't know how much shit's going to be spoiled for us. Like we get to stay off the internet.
Yes.
Like you have to.
I've already thought we're going to be visiting Annie's family in Illinois, and the NFT thing's there. So I'm already thinking if I do reserve it, I'll reserve it for Illinois. Because if I can sneak in, the one thing there is they have like a hardcore mask mandate right now. So at least I'm like you, I could get in there at like 8 a.m, or like I'll go at 1 a.m. I don't care. Just
somewhere where there's no one else there. Not it could be a couple people in there. I'm not worried about that. A few is
fine,
But there's like I want to be able to be like, and Taylor and I talked about like, we just have to bite the bullet, get a babysitter, and go at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning when people are past it, or even honestly take the day off on freaking Monday and go at Monday at 11 o'clock in the morning, and so that no one's there, so that I can actually get in there and watch the movie and see it, so that nothing's spoiled. Because I'm gonna have to like turn off words and block words on Twitter and all that crap, so I don't see any of this shit that puts out there. Because some people have no friggin' care in the world about spoiling things for people. We just spoiled a bunch of the first 2 Spider-Man movies that came out 2 years ago and 4 years ago. Not the weekend of. So
what's what you and I always were saying. You got about like 2 weeks to a month, like, and then it's like people can talk about it then. But
and I forgot to say, if you're watching this, I'm actually wearing my it's a Midtown School of Science and Technology established in 1962 t-shirt from the actual movie.
That's cool.
From the second movie. They were wearing that when they were doing the recap on the TV thing. But so I mean, I'm looking forward to it. We are. It's going to be a perfect trilogy to the thing. I think it's going to make all of the money that it can. It's probably going to be the most profitable movie. We've said this before, post-pandemic, in the pandemic, that there is out there. I think this movie is going to make the most out of all of them that have been released so far, just because of the people wanting to go see it. I don't know. It depends on how well it does opening weekend. It depends on, I think, how long it stays in the theaters. If it does really, really, really well, it's going to stay in the theaters for 2 or 3 months. If it doesn't do as well, if it does just as well as the other ones, it'll be 45 days to 30 days, or sorry, 45 to 60 days, and we get it at home video because they want to be able to people to see it. Yeah, that's a lot of Spider-Man talk, buddy.
That's a lot of Spider-Man, but man, like I said, I think I'm more excited for No Way Home. I mean, I don't know, than I have been since the buildup of Endgame, I guess. I'm trying to think the last time I was this like you said, I don't care if the movie's 8 hours long. Like I'm ready now. So
and
yeah, we're gonna have a lot to.
The anticipation just for the trailers to see this movie had been way more of an anticipation than it was for Shang-Chi or Eternals or Venom or anything that's been out there. But one thing I forgot to mention really quickly is the No Way Home part. I'm wondering if there's a deal with Marvel that Peter Parker belongs to Sony, and Sony can use him in the Venom movies, in the like Morbius movies, and all that the Sony version of the Spider-Verse. That this is where Sony says you can have Miles Morales. And I'm wondering if in this multiverse thing where we finally find out we see Miles Morales as Spider-Man come into the multiverse, is now in the MCU, and they kind of trade places with Tom Holland in a sense. Tom Holland then goes over to Sony, and they can use him to do whatever they want with Sony. And then Miles Morales is now part of it. So that Tom Holland moves on, but we've now got Miles Morales for 3 movies. And obviously still owned by Sony in a sense because they own the rights and all that stuff. I'm just wondering if this is where we get the swap on that too.
That'd be a super smart way to do it. I hadn't thought about that, but that would, because I mean, I'm like you, I'm ready for Miles Morales too. I love the Miles Morales Spider-Man. So yeah, that'd be a brilliant way of doing it. And we've already kind of hinted at it with the cartoon. So
yes. And guess what? We didn't talk about either. There's also another multiverse, the Spider-Man video game. So there's also those that's actually technically can be considered another canon. Multiverse. So there's that aspect of it too. So I'm excited for it because I want to see what happens. We have not been more anticipated for a movie, and it comes out. I think this is coming out next week or the week after that for us on December 17th. If you feel comfortable going to the theaters, go see it. If not, wait for it to come out and whatever. We have not decided if Adam and I end up going to see it in the theaters, we'll probably do a review sooner than later. If we don't, we'll wait until the home box office, not the home box office, but like digital release, and we'll do it that way too. But there's a possibility we go see it secretively in the theaters, not together, but we'll be in different spots. That's why.
Yeah. I feel like there's a high probability it's going to happen.
Yes. It's again, we didn't do it. It was something we talked about. If you guys haven't listened to our Shang-Chi review, please do that. But something we talked about in the Shang-Chi review too was a movie that we weren't like, oh my God, I got to see this. So waiting for it to come in digital wasn't a problem. This is the movie that's like, oh God, I can't do this. The same thing with Doctor Strange, most likely. But Doctor Strange comes out next year, and Adam, please let this thing be somewhat over.
I know.
Jesus.
Well, it's like I always, I don't go to the theater hardly at all, but when I do, like Star Wars or Marvel, like I'm there at 12:30 a.m. on the night it comes out, like, and I like that. Like I want to do that again.
Yes. And we will do that. I love to do that. I love to do like live stream on our Instagram with us walking in, and I do like a whole like in the parking lot thing before we go in and going to see it, and initial reactions right afterwards. But we got to get past this freaking thing.
Oh my God.
Taylor said the new variant sounds like a transformer. Omicron.
Yes,
like, oh my
totally
God,
does.
No,
yes.
stop.
Omicron Prime.
Yes, like she's a pro. But yeah. So we'll see what happens. But until then, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Capes and Tights Podcast, Twitter at Capes Tights Pod, and anywhere you can find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. CapesandTights.com. Yeah, and hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, and we'll talk again. Obviously, before we have a couple episodes coming up before Christmas, but it's fun. I'm excited to watch Christmas movies.
I am too. And I'm excited, man. We got just so much Marvel stuff coming for the next while that we're not going to even know what to do with ourselves.
No. And we'll promise you, any DC heads out there, we have it on our kind of our tentative schedule to do a Dark Knight trilogy review and talk and stuff like that. And the new Batman's coming out in the future and stuff like that. When we have space to fill in these spots, we'll do that as well. But we've been able to talk to some cool authors recently, so it's been able to move the schedule around over the past couple of weeks. So last week we talked to Jeremy Dauber of American Comics: A History, and then a couple weeks ago we did that free speech handbook that comes out on November 30th, which was last week on this episode. So, but until then, that's Adam over there. He's been Adam. Me. Well, he still is Adam, but
I'm still Adam.
And you're going to be Adam continuing moving forward. I don't know
which version of me am I? That's the question.
In the next multiverse, no. And I'm Justin. This has been Capes and Tights Podcast, a comic book and pop culture podcast. Until next time, see ya.
See ya.
So, of course, the second that Adam and I stop recording today's episode, news broke from comicbook.com, or at least that's where I found out the information, that Sony and Marvel have agreed to make 3 more movies that are produced and helped by Marvel and Sony together. And so at least one of those movies is set to feature Tom Holland, according to comicbook.com. And other features include Peter Parker and so on and so forth. Sony's movie producer, Amy Pascal, tells Fandango that's not the case, that this is not the end, that there actually is more. There's 3 more films returning, and that Tom Holland is expected to be in at least one of them. This is not the last movie that we are going to make with Marvel. This is not the last Spider-Man movie, Pascal says. We are getting ready to make the next Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland in Marvel. We're thinking that of this as 3 films, and now we are going to go on to the next 3. This is not the last of our MCU movies. Again, we don't know what's happening, but we were kind of speculating what was going to happen with Tom Holland and Spider-Man and whether or not this was going to wrap up the end, but it's not. And so, obviously more Spider-Man. So again, just wanted to add this to the end of the episode after Adam and I stopped recording, that we needed to add this little caveat that there are going to be 3 more Marvel movies featuring Spider-Man made by Sony and Spider-Man, or Sony and Marvel. And at least one of them is going to feature Tom Holland as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. So again, thanks for listening, everybody. Peace.